Shadow of the Orient is like a sketchy roller coaster ride. There are ups, there are downs, it'll throw you for a loop, and occasionally the whole thing flies so far off the rails that the entire theme park gets shut down. Actually, on second thought, it's worse than that, because at least the broken theme park isn't asking for money. Look, I hate to cut this intro short, but there's no reason to delay what I am sure will be a very contentious review of Shadow of the Orient. When it was pitched to me, Shadow of the Orient sounded like a can't-miss mashup of Ninja Gaiden and Hunt Down, two games that I genuinely love. It stars a heavenly warrior named Zhao Leng who travels east when an evil shadow clan kidnaps the children of the Orient. Through 3 acts and 15 levels, our supernatural hero will battle the warlords and rescue the innocent kids, 3 at a time. You know, as a throwback action game, that's a pretty solid setup. I mean, the bad guys are a little vague, but it has a strong theme and a cool hero. And with 3 caged children to rescue in each stage, plus all kinds of hidden treasure abound, Shadow of the Orient gives you a lot of reason to not just replay the stages, but thoroughly explore them. The surprisingly complicated level designs is one of the things that I genuinely like about this game. Another thing is the presentation, which gives us beautiful pixel graphics and stunning backgrounds. It definitely looks the part of a throwback action game, though you can tell that there are some modern effects added throughout. This game looks sharp and visually makes a great first impression. Unfortunately, things go downhill the moment you pick up a controller. You see, the comparison to a roller coaster ride is apt, because Shadow of the Orient really did send me on a journey full of highs and lows. I'll admit, I kinda started out hating this game. It's one of those throwback games that fundamentally misunderstands the difference between a challenging game and one filled with unavoidable cheap hits. Let's go ahead and use Ninja Gaiden as a comparison, as I think we can all agree that it's one of the harder games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Despite having a reputation for being challenging, it's also fair, especially in the beginning. When the enemies rush at you in the first level, Ryu is able to take them out with a single swipe of the blade. That's not the case when it comes to Shadow of the Orient. Our hero starts out with nothing more than a series of short-ranged punches. This means that if you actually want to hit the enemy, then you're gonna need to be right next to them. And you know what? That would be fine if, just like Ninja Gaiden, you defeated the enemy in a single hit. But since most will take 3 or 4 hits to kill, you're basically guaranteed to take damage with every encounter. And it's actually worse than that, because most of the early enemies will rush at you, or in the case of birds, swoop down, giving you little time to react. Couple that with the finicky wall jump and an over-reliance on spikes, and it feels early on like you can't go a second without losing some life. And don't get me wrong, the problem isn't that some of the hits feel cheap and unavoidable, but rather that all of them feel cheap and unavoidable. Every single one of them. That's when I knew that I must be missing something here. Surely the developer doesn't intend me to take damage after literally every encounter. This is probably my fault. And, to be fair, I am partially to blame. You see, after going all the way back to the main menu, I discovered that you can shop and buy new weapons and abilities and upgrades for our heavenly warrior. What I found were multiple swords and a staff, but I didn't have the gems to buy any of those. So I opted instead to pick up the ability where I damage the enemies by jumping on their head, kinda like Super Mario. I figured that this would be a far easier way to fight the bad guys while replaying the first few stages to earn enough money to buy an actual weapon. I ended up learning 2 important lessons from doing this. For one thing, jumping on the head of your opponent is incredibly inconsistent. There are times when it works perfectly, and then there are times where it just doesn't register as an attack, so instead you end up taking damage. The other thing you're going to quickly realize is that the colored gems that you're grabbing are only going up 1 at a time. Oh sure, the number popping up from snagging a purple gem is 25, but you're not getting 25 of that currency. You're just getting 1. And since there are several different colors to pick up, each for a different type of weapon or upgrade, it's gonna take you a long time to earn even the cheapest items. What is this, a free-to-play mobile game? So after doing a lot of grinding, I did eventually earn enough to buy a weapon, which promised a longer range. While that was true, I quickly realized that it just didn't help that much. Oh sure, I could hit an enemy from a greater distance, but they're still rushing at me and they take multiple hits. Really, unless I spent the time to grind for the most powerful sword in the entire game, I was still destined to take a bunch of cheap hits. And believe it or not, that's not even the worst thing about these weapons. You see, for whatever reason, my longer range staff simply refused to hit the flying enemies. No matter how close or how accurate my swing was, I just couldn't hit those damn birds. Now, it's at the point of the review where you're probably thinking that the worst is behind us. I mean, what could possibly be worse than the cheap hits and being forced to grind for different colored gems? Well, let me introduce you to the frame rate, which can best be described as having a stutter. I don't know if it's just the PlayStation 5 version of the game or if it's more widespread than that. But this game has a bad tendency of grinding to a halt, giving us maybe 1 or 2 frames of animation every few seconds. It starts out with the occasional stutter, but there were times where I honestly wondered if the game had frozen or not. This makes exploring the surprisingly complicated levels a real pain, especially when it comes to the tougher platforming challenges. It honestly taught me to avoid looking for hidden treasure chests or even the caged kids, since really all I wanted to do was get through these stages as quickly as possible. For me, the single-digit frame rate was the final straw, and I just clocked out. I just wanted the whole thing to be over. I hated playing Shadow of the Orient, and it didn't have to be like this. On paper, this is the kind of game that I usually can't stop raving about thanks to the pixel graphics and the extreme challenge. I love Ninja Gaiden, and I find that difficulty to be satisfying. But this new throwback game is hard for all the wrong reasons. Even before I was dealing with the atrocious frame rate stuttering problem, I found myself angry at the absurd amount of cheap hits. The whole thing left a really bad taste in my mouth, to the point where I completely stopped caring about rescuing those innocent children. Shadow of the Orient is not how you make a throwback action game. Avoid! Shadow of the Orient is a throwback action game that fundamentally misunderstands what people liked about Ninja Gaiden and other action platformers from the 8 and 16-bit era. It looks good, and I like the enemy designs, but you're gonna have to put up with a whole lot of cheap and unavoidable hits until you grind enough to upgrade your heavenly hero with new weapons and abilities. And even after you've done that, you're in for a whole new batch of problems, including some of the worst slowdown and freezing that I've ever seen. The single-digit frame rate and inconsistent gameplay turns regular platforming challenges into rage-inducing death traps. Yeah, they may look good, but you're better off leaving this game in the shadows. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. In fact, this is our 3rd review of the week, so go check out my review of Expelled and Rendering Ranger R2 Rewind. 2 very different games. Now, here's the question I have for you. Do you prefer your Ninja Gaiden to be 2D or 3D? I guess what I'm asking is, do you like the classic NES games, or do you prefer the newer 3D action games? Or maybe you're a fan of the original arcade beat-em-up? Let me see your preference in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Review Crew. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.